So I'm going to take horizontal sections cutting across the entire zone 3 at the back area. But what I want to do is I want to kind of assess before I just take a section. I want to make sure that it's not all of those kind of like fine baby hairs that can tend to be a lot shorter than our actual length, right? Like we've got these little baby hairs. So I want to touch base and make sure that my first section is going to be reminiscent of my line. So I think that looks pretty good. I always like to kind of groom or comb through the hair when I'm cutting. That way I know that it's nice and neat when I go to take down my first section. All right, so I'm going to be doing a soft point cut for this line. Let's see if I can bring it up anymore. Here we go. All right, and then look slightly forward. Perfect. So I'm going to split this up into 3 panels, right? So almost thinking about the shape of the head like we do when we're doing shear over comb, right? The head is curved. So, you know, when you're doing shear over comb, you're hitting this area this way, this area this way, this area this way. So I'm just kind of dividing the hair up naturally how it splits to then start cutting my line. And I'm cutting just flat against her back, and I'm doing a soft point cut. You guys see that okay? And I'm tilting my body slightly so that everyone can see what I'm doing. But when I'm standing in the salon, I'm making sure that I am straight and square with her body, right? So almost aligning my hips with her shoulders. And that's definitely gonna prevent you from curving up on the sides and creating a rounded line, because we really want a strong square line. So I'm making sure that I'm dropping my elbow, and I'm just doing a soft, I would say a short point cut. So nothing too deep. I don't want to create too much movement on the ends, as she's got quite a bit of movement. We want strength here. Perfect, so that's my first section. And depending on the density, you can take your length in, you know, however many sections are appropriate. So I'll probably be cutting my length in about 3 or 4 sections. You know, I know I'll be layering, so you don't necessarily have to you know, take super small sections. Less is more. Less cuts equals less blending, less room for error, right? So be really intentional when you're cutting that it's going to make an impact with your line, right? Obviously, if you have a lot of density, be mindful of your density. So I'm gonna turn her this way. And I'm making sure that I'm getting into a nice squat position so I'm not hinging out my back. Body positioning is so, so important, especially when we're cutting. And because I'm point cutting, I'm making sure that I can see my previous cut section in my fingers so that I don't cut that line again and create graduation, right? I want a strong line, so I want to make sure that I'm not creating a graduated line. I feel like it's always nice to see a long layer because it's something we're gonna do every single day. It's our bread and butter. And you know, sometimes you want white bread and regular country crock margarine, and sometimes you want a French baguette with some beautiful olive oil. So I feel like it's good to see many iterations of a long layer just to keep it fresh, right? That's why education is the driving force to my craft behind the chair, because it's all about keeping the perspective really fresh. That's what's been definitely very impressionable to me with working with Garen, is even though he is this iconic hairdresser who's, you know, had a 5-decade-long and counting career, Garen still likes to try new things. And I'll never forget when I first met Garen. It was at an R&Co Creative Collective luncheon in Chicago, and I was so nervous to meet this icon in the hairdressing world. And you know, of course, I spent weeks trying to figure out what to wear. And when Garen walked in the room, I mean, his presence is magnetic. Everybody looks, everybody's like, wow, that's him. And, you know, I kept trying to think, like, what do I say? What do I say? And he came and sat right next to me for that luncheon. And he was so friendly and so personable and so warm. And he just made me feel seen and heard, and like my opinion mattered. And it was just so life-changing for me to see like this person be so famous, yet so humble. And I got, you know, an opportunity to work with Garen backstage at New York Fashion Week. And the first time, Garen asked me to switch out, you know, to basically be his eyes in the dressing room, and be his hands in the dressing room, because, you know, men are not, if it's a female modeled fashion show, you know, the opposite sex is not really allowed behind in the dressing room. So Garen looked at me and was like, okay, so you're doing Bella Hadid's wig, so I need you to make sure that you can take it off while she's getting dressed and put this new wig on, and make sure you put the pins, you know, here and there. And I mean, I was so just enamored with the fact that this man would trust me with, you know, such a major supermodel, and, you know, gave me that responsibility. But, you know, he just believes in kind of elevating the culture of hairdressing and, you know, giving with his time and his experience. And it was honestly my Cinderella moment, and I'm so grateful to have had those opportunities and to have been able to work hands-on with Garen. And God, I miss it. If you guys have worked, you know, any sort of editorial or any sort of fashion, I don't care if it's your, you know, small town or wherever, like, don't you miss that energy of everyone getting together backstage? And I kind of like thrive on that like chaotic, like, okay, all right, and go energy. So to me, it's definitely something that I miss, and definitely something that is just so fun, you know, and just so different than what we do every day. You know, I know there's editorial stylists out there who are, you know, doing editorial work every day, living the dream. But yeah, it's definitely something that I find so special and just so inspiring to bring with me behind the chair. All right, so we've got our length established. So even though I've point cut, this is just a really nice, soft, strong perimeter, right? So we're gonna move through the side, and I'm gonna start on this side. I'm gonna kind of move the camera slightly. Sorry for any vibration here. All right. So for the side, I'm standing in front of her because it's a lot easier to comb towards yourself than it is to stand behind and try to figure out where your comb is going to end up. So I'm going to connect through. And again, I want to make sure that my sectioning is you know, dense enough that I'm able to see my line, right? There's no point in cutting a few hairs if you're not going to see the line. And then I am going to have you turn your head all the way to the side, Angela, and I'm going to bring you forward. So I'm turning Angela's head to the left side while I'm cutting on this side. And what that's going to do is it's going to clear the shoulder for me. So I'm able to get in here and know that it's not going to pop up. I'm not going to create a hole. I'm just creating a really nice square line. And again, making sure that I'm dropping my elbow on the hand that's holding the hair so that I'm not curving up, right? We want our face framing to be really intentional, and we don't want to create a hole in our face framing. Especially in this area where we have like our recession, we're just so much finer here. And Angela's got these cute little curly baby hairs that I love. Those are so cute. But yeah, you know, those hairs don't really contribute to our length. So we want to make sure that we're creating a really nice strong line. So I'm just cutting that side in 2 sections. Again, knowing that I'll be layering, I can be a little bit more macro with my sections. Less is more. All right, and then turn to the left. Thank you. So primarily our length that we cut was from the back length. Perfect. All right, now we'll do the other side. And I'm going to reposition so you guys can see this side. Again, really making sure that I'm kind of grooming through those ends, dispersing that water evenly. And I'm going to turn this way and turn your head to that side. And if you guys have any questions, please leave a comment. If I don't see it, I'll definitely reply to it. Again, a soft point cut, right? So if we think about point cutting, we want to think about the angle of our shears. So when we're point cutting, this is 12 o'clock, we want to be 11 o'clock, right? So just slightly off. We don't necessarily need to be 9 o'clock, but 11 o'clock. So just slightly off, being just straight up and down. And that's just going to create some really nice soft movement, but still maintain strength in our line. Okay, I'm going to move you this way. I love that sound. Chop, chop, chop. Perfect. All right. So we've got our line established. So now we're going to work on face framing. So in order to determine face framing, and I am going to mist her down just a smidge more. So we're going to use our comb, and I'll turn her so you guys can see what I'm seeing. So we're going to place the spine of the comb right on the apex of the head, and the point in which the comb begins to lift off of the head is your reference point for whether it be a fringe or a face framing. So that is my pivot point from where I want to take my parting. So I'm going to take a diagonal back section, right again to that mastoid bone. So I'm using my finger that I'm not combing the hair with as a guide. To where I want my face framing to live. Again, just a smidge of water. And I like to section out both sides. I don't like to work one section and then go to the other side and hope for the best. So I'm going to section out the other side as well. So again, spine of the comb on the head. I've got my finger on that mastoid bone right behind her ear. And I just trace a line from the top of the head to the mastoid bone. And a smidge of water. Just to help keep my sections clean and help keep everything nice and saturated. Alright, so for the face framing, I am going to stand directly in front of her, so I'll do my best to not block the camera. Let me know if you guys can see. So for Angela, she does have kind of this finer density. However, I want to make sure that these lines are still really soft. Actually got a smidge more length here. I'm a sucker for clean sectioning. I don't know about you guys, but it's definitely what makes me able to predict how well a cut is going to go. So I'm going to subsection this. So I've just taken just that very front face framing, and I want to make sure that whatever I'm dropping out doesn't have a hole, right? So we've got that little baby hairs in the recession there. So I'm going to borrow a smidge more hair. So this is my first section, and then I'm just going to kind of slowly twirl that away. I'll bring the camera a bit closer so you guys can see. Okay, so I like to start when there's an exuberant growth pattern, or a cowlick or whatever you call them, in your region. I like to start on the flatter side and then match the side that I know is going to pop up. Because I feel like if you cut the side that's going to pop up first, then you kind of run the risk of it being a little bit too short. So I like to cut the flatter side of a cowlick first. And the way that I'm going to be subsectioning this is just whatever would live on her face if we did a full fringe. So I'm going to start there. And I'm going to be elevating this section slightly off the head. So I want my shortest point to hit Cupid's bow, and I'm going to point cut. So I'm point cutting softly with my fingers. I'm creating the angle of my line with how steep my fingers are pointing. So I've got my shortest bit just hitting about right there. I can go a smidge shorter. make sure that I'm not taking too much of my transition, right? I want to make sure that this line stays really angled and doesn't get too square, because then it's going to look like a chop. So really, really angling my fingers to connect through. All right, I think that's good. And now that I'm moving towards the length, I want to lower my elevation, right? So if we're creating elevation up around the face framing, it's going to create a really soft diffused line. And then the more that you lower, the more that you're creating strength. So quiet, you could hear a pin drop. Hopefully you don't hear my neighbor bringing their bike in. All right, so there's my face framing, right? So I've got my shortest bit at the cupid's bow and kind of ending at our length. So now I'm going to take that second subsection and I'm going to subsection out that first section, and I'm going to elevate slightly higher. And I see my line. I want to make sure that I don't cut my line. And lowering my elevation as I'm coming up through the length. Perfect. Yeah, I love and I love that, like, with the color too of her hair, I can see exactly where that's gonna pop and what that's gonna do for me. Perfect. All right, we'll do the other side. Now this part is tricky, right? Because we've got the exuberant growth pattern and it's the other side. We need to match them. So again, I'm going to subsection. Just taking this in two sections. Want to make sure my first section is dense enough that it will create a line. And sometimes, you know, the hairs, she's not a mannequin. The hairs are not placed evenly on the head. So you want to make sure that your section is going to create a line. And if that's, you know, bigger than the first section on the other side, that's okay. It's, you know, it's custom and unique to the model that you're working on. So I'm standing directly in front. I'm going to take this side, again, kind of just taking, she's got all these baby hairs that can help me figure out what is her high recession. And I'm gonna check in with this side and see where my length is. And I'm just gonna cut a little guide for myself. This way, I know exactly, I'm not gonna bring that face framing too short, right? I know exactly where it's going to live. And now I'm gonna cut up to that. So I've got my shortest point sitting in my fingers past my second knuckle. So I know that I'm not gonna cut it because I shouldn't go there, right? And I'm just angling down into my length. So I've got my elevation for this section, and then I'm slowly gonna drop my elevation as I move towards my length. And the challenge of matching the two sides. I feel like I spend most of my time here in the haircut. Like, how's it look? How's it look? How's it look? You know? It's so important because that's what the client sees and that's what makes them feel, you know, whether or not, like, that's what makes them feel like they have a particular style. All right, and now our second section. Again, taking that first subsection, making sure I'm combing all of the hair to me, and then just cutting slightly past that just for softness. And then I always like to use my eye, use my hands, play with the hair, move the hair, make sure it's sitting exactly where I want it to, right? So opening up that kind of, she's got a much more narrow face. So we want to make sure that we're adding width where it's appropriate, right? So like right at that Cupid's bow smile line, opening that up so everyone can see her beautiful eyes. All right, so I've got a smidge of length in my corner on this side, so I'm just gonna knock that off. How you doing, Angela?
Great.
Good, great. I turned the air conditioning off so it's not super loud, and hopefully you're not roasting.
I'm pretty comfortable.
You're comfortable? Okay, good. Good, good. All right, so we've got our nice strong face framing, and now we're gonna do the layer. So for the layer, I'm gonna be taking a vertical parting. I'm gonna lower her down so you guys can see. And it's gonna be about 1 inch thick. And I don't need to go really past the occipital here. I gotta lock my chair because we're on an angle here a little bit. So I don't necessarily need to go all the way down to the nape, but I will, just as a point of reference, so you guys can see how far down this section that I'm going. Take a little off this side. Okay, so about a 1 inch section. So I want to make sure that I'm not going past the occipital bone, right? Because what that's going to do is it's going to shatter my length more than I'd like, right? So as far as the shape of the head, this is about as far down as I'd like to go. I don't know if you guys can see. Yeah? Yeah. Perfect. Oh, I see Marzena says witam. Dzień dobry, Marzena. All right, and I'm gonna mist this down with a smidge of water. I just have to get a little refill. BRB. Do you guys ever layer long, fine hair once it's dry? I feel like I do that a lot. Let me know if I'm pulling you in any way. Okay, so I'll raise this up so you guys can see the top of my line. So I'm going to be cutting this way. Okay. So I'm going to be cutting a guide short to long, using this length as my guide to my length back here, right? So now I'm doing a little bit of a medium to deep point cut. And luckily she's got that color difference so I can see right when I get there. It's kind of nice actually. Mm-hmm. Perfect. So this is my guide for the rest of my layers. So now I'm going to be taking pivoting sections, using this as my guide. I'm just going to divide that in two. Thank you guys for your patience with our quick drying length here. All right, and I see my guide, and I'm just cutting what meets that center guide. So because I took that vertical central parting across the center of the head, I always have my guide for where my length needs to be shortest. So I'm essentially just cutting point A to point B, making sure I'm dropping my length. So it makes it super easy to get there. And I am just going to cut this front length. And you can do this in 1 or 2 sections depending on your density. But with my body positioning, I'm standing in front and combing up and away. Always making sure that I'm cutting slightly past the last section that I cut to ensure softness and no graduation. Sorry, that was quite the spin. All right, so again, working my way through the back, knowing I have my guide right here. Again, I'm just going to kind of part that off at that apex to mastoid bone. This is in 2 sections, that's in 2 sections, and then I'm done. And for styling today, we're going to do a really voluminous, beautiful blow dry using our R&Co Blue products. So I'm thinking I'm going to spray through some of our Essential Hair Tonic as well as the highest volumizing mousse and just try to create as much root lift as we can and really get that soft face framing to pop. And I'll be posting a photo of the after on my Instagram if you guys want to take a gander later. My Instagram is at ania.lisz. So I'll be posting some after photos. I think we forgot to take it before, but Angela's got it before, so. Perfect, so just moving right along. Very classic, elegant shape. Just a little bit of a different perspective. So I'm going to use our Essential Hair Tonic, and the reason why I'm going to be choosing that product is that it's our go-to. So it's not just a prep spray or a leave-in conditioner, although it does have porosity balancing properties to it. It's going to be our go-to for versatile, flexible holds. It has a lot of memory, a lot of shine, and it's really non-drying. You know how a lot of prep sprays can get kind of like sticky or feel just a little bit like gummy in the hair? The Essential Hair Tonic is always very lightweight, and that's, I would say, characteristic of all of the products within the R&Co Blue selection or collection, is that everything has a lightweight feel to it. Perfect. So I've got a little bit of my length that dropped out from my layering, so I'm just gonna even that out. And then we'll get to styling. And yeah, just straight on. I know that we're gonna go a little bit over on time, and I won't bore you guys with having the blow dryer on. I know that's, you know, we've been doing Facebook's lives for over a year now, and you know, watching somebody blow dry over Zoom or over Facebook is not very fun. So I'll show you guys a little bit of how I will apply the product, and I'll dry the front, and then I'll post the after. Just checking in on my length. I always like to leave a smidge of length to trim off at the end. I think as a long-haired person, it's like just innately within us to be like, okay, we don't want it to be too short. We want to go shorter, but we don't want to shock. Got just a little smidgy corner here. Unless you want to shock, you know? All right, so there we have our essential long layer. So now we'll get to styling. Obviously these blonder bits are a little bit more dry, so I'm just gonna mist those down with a pinch of water. You want the hair to be wet when you're introducing styling products, especially with the blue collection, as it is so reparative. So you want to make sure that the cuticle or the surface of the hair is open so that you can introduce the products and have them actually go in to where they need to do their job. Perfect. So I'm going to spray through our Essential Hair Tonic in this beautiful sugarcane plastic biodegradable bottle. I love the shape of this bottle because I can hold on to it. It's, you know, a little bit more of kind of like a classic flask shape. And I'm just spraying this through roots to ends as I'm working up the hair. And I'm still trying to find the threshold of too much of the Essential Hair Tonic, and I really haven't gotten there yet. And it just smells so clean and fresh. The scent for the R&Co Blue collection is a lot lighter than our R&Co Core line. So we have about 25% of the fragrance load that is in the R&Co Core collection. So it is really nice and light and soft, and I feel like it's not overpowering at all. So I've been loving this for when I'm in a teeny tiny hotel room doing bridal, because it just smells really fresh, and it keeps the room from having that like hairspray smell. And now I can comb through the hair so easy, and it's gonna give me a lot of good memory. And I'm just going to apply a smidge more, just on those parts that are a bit more porous. I'm going to grab a mousse. I'm going to be using our highest volumizing mousse, which comes in this recycled aluminum can, which is super beautiful. And this mousse expands. So I'm using probably, what is that, like an egg size? And that is plenty for the whole head. So I'm going to emulsify this mousse in my hand. And it's definitely a creamy mousse. It doesn't feel like a sticky, a mousse that's gonna get, you know, really like stuck in the hair. I'm gonna apply it in the crown area where I want to see the most amount of volume. And I like to get my hands in there when I'm applying product. I definitely like to massage it in, apply product with intention, right? So I'm really kind of working the cuticle layer to lay a little bit more flat. All right, so I'm gonna blow dry and then we'll post the after on my Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching.